look at all the world leaders, like, God, we have like the best leadership on the planet for all the humans. And the reality is we've got 1/10 of 1% making decisions for nearly the 100%. And they're not the same decisions we like. Give it their all for each other, even when it's not convenient for them to do so. It could be a connection. It could be a referral. It could be a recommendation because I'm coming to their town. It could be come and stay at my house. Use my office, use my car, use my boat without any kind of like, what am I going to get out of this? It's a beautiful way to live your life. We think, oh, giving all the time is like the best. It's not, because it depletes you if you're just always giving. Giving and taking with intention. I say taking, what the distinction is, I don't mind a taker if they come and say, here's what I need, but here's why I need it. And it's very thoughtful.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome, and you are in for a treat today. I see Ron, I see Omani, but I do know the name Carson. Huge financial services company, decades in the business. And we have the founder of that company today, and we're going to dig into so many interesting things. But is it Ron? Is it Omani? Which one is it?
Jerome, I'm so glad you asked. I just hosted a retreat up at our ranch this weekend, and anybody that knew me for most of my life, all they knew was Ron Carson. And I started going by Omani Carson, and they're like, okay, explain the shift. And so, you know, I have two periods of my life. There's a period up to age 50, which I operated totally on fear and scarcity. You know, the story, my parents went broke when I was 17 years of age. It drove me, and this will be directly relatable to what we're talking about today, but it drove me to be successful. I made a vow to myself 42 years ago, never to be poor, because my parents and my family lost everything we had. We were never rich, but we were comfortable. And I said, you know, I was so humiliated being in a small farm community that I vowed, it seared my soul, basically. I vowed never to have that happen to me or my family. And it was so unhealthy because I was driven relentlessly to work all the time. And I always felt like this fear and scarcity operating system, it was a house of cards, get ready to come crashing down. And I started doing some real work with a therapist out in Venice, California. His name's Kurosh. I call him my cosmic father. And I found a way to shift my operating system from fear and scarcity to love and abundance. And a couple of things happened. One, I started meeting some of the most incredible people around the world. Abundance started to flow in. I think about how hard I worked to get to a certain level of financial freedom. And once I shifted my operating system, I met people and I had opportunities open up by a factor of 1,000,000. You know, there's just no comparison. And part of this was, and how I got the name was, I hosted a bunch of indigenous chiefs from around the world. You know, the Eskimos were represented from Greenland, the Aztecs, and it was around the prophecy of the condor and the eagle, where the North and the South reemerge, you know, back to one. And I helped that happen a couple of years ago in Palenque, Mexico, helped financially sponsor and showed up. And as a thank you, they inducted me into the Lakota tribe and gave me a name, my Lakota name, which is Tate Omani, Tate Omani, Omani, and it means walking into a stiff wind. And I stepped down as CEO and up as chairman to the Carson Group, company I founded 42 years ago. And someone said, you know, you prefer Omani? I go, yeah, Omani represents the love and abundance of my life. And Iran reminds me of the fear and scarcity part of my life. And so I love being called Omani, but if people slip up all the time and Ron or Ronnie or Carson, that's fine too. But Omani just sings to that love and abundance frequency in my heart.
I love what Omani stands for. Why stiff wind? Do you know what, did they explain the name to you?
Yeah, because I want to make my personal mission is that today no one's happy with the leadership we have. I can't imagine too many people listening to this are like, oh my gosh, if we get Biden or we get Trump as our president, it's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to this country. I just don't hear that. Nor do I hear anybody look at all the world leaders like, God, we have like the best leadership on the planet for all the humans. And the reality is we've got, 1/10 of 1% making decisions for nearly the 100%. And they're not the same decisions we like. No one really, the fact is we have so much in common as humans, yet we all fight over itty bitty things because it's all, they're operating out of fear and scarcity. And I'm in financial services. It's one of the most conservative places to be professionally in Nebraska, on top of that. And they're like, good luck to you, brother, but you got a stiff wind that you're walking into. And so hence the name.
Wow. They
I
nailed
want to
it.
make changes from the inside out. I believe by building these micro communities. I have a gathering in Nebraska every fall, Jerome. This last year, we had billionaires there that owned sports franchises down to hunter-gatherer tribes from the Amazon that had nothing. And when they walked on the ranch, everybody was equals as humans. And that was really powerful and beautiful to see.
Rare is the word that came to mind when you started describing that. Whoa.
Yeah.
And you're existing at all of these different levels, right? You've got friends and peers that are at that financial level. You've got clients at that financial level. And then you've got those who are maybe on the more spiritual end of the spectrum and just kind of enjoying life and expecting that the universe will provide. So abundance is a word that gets thrown around a lot lately.
Yes.
What does that shift mean to you? Like, what truly is abundance? Because I mean, some people think it's just money.
Yeah, it's a lot of things beyond money. And I'll give you a good example. I've started 3 businesses that were part of the Carson group throughout my life. And one of them was a coaching business. And today it's operating, it's the largest coaching business for financial advisors in the nation. And I would share everything I was doing with everybody in my group, even people like I would go speak and they're like, how can you give all your secrets away? I remember I went to a Barron's meeting where they brought in top advisors. And I go to these meetings and someone, they would give the general idea of what they were doing. It's like, can you give me more details? And I say, I can't, it's my secret. And I was like, that's not how I want to operate. The reality is we set an example of we share everything we're doing. We don't believe in secrets, because what happens is when you open up and you start sharing and you're willing to give away what you have, you build what's known as emotional reciprocity. People want to reciprocate back. And so you get this, you're either living in a vortex where everybody's hoarding because no one trusts each other, hence fear and scarcity, or you can be in a flywheel in communities where you're giving and they're giving back. And man, a lot of times it would take what I thought were great ideas, improve them dramatically, and then share them back with me or give me brand new ideas. And so we created this ecosystem. And I can tell you that people that come into it go, this is different than anything I've been a part of. Like everybody's willing to give it their all for each other, even when it's not convenient for them to do so. It could be a connection. It could be a referral. It could be a recommendation because I'm coming to their town. It could be come and stay at my house, use my office, use my car, use my boat, without any kind of like, what am I going to get out of this? It's really it's a beautiful way to live your life.
So with no concern for what you're going to get out of it, how did you find the right people? Because I've seen folks who want to live that way, but they're surrounded by takers. And when you're surrounded by takers and you live that way, I think you end up being drained because nobody's pouring in. And you can correct me if that wasn't your experience or you haven't seen that. But how'd you find the people? Because I think there's a very special group of people that have to be around you in order for this to be a successful model or approach.
So Jerome, and I can't remember whose book, it might have been Adam Grant's book around givers and takers. And I think, and people that keep score. So there's, I think there's four kinds of people out there. There's givers, there's takers, and there's the keep scorers. And so much of my life, I was a keep scorer. Like if I felt like you owed me something, I had a little sticky pad, what it was, and I would file it away somewhere. And then there's a fourth category, which I think is the healthiest. It's called takers with intention. Because we think, oh, giving all the time is like the best. It's not, because it depletes you if you're just always giving. Giving and taking with intention. I say taking, what the distinction is, I don't mind a taker if they come and say, here's what I need, but here's why I need it. And it's very thoughtful. And here's a dynamic that happens in the universe. When you're operating on a fear and scarcity and you don't trust anybody and you're fearful and you hoard, you attract those kinds of people because they're the only kind of people that want to be around you because they can relate to you because they're operating in the same vortex. When you start making this shift to love and abundance, you start attracting exactly what you are. It just works that way. And believe me, I'm not a, it's like, I'm a realist too. People say, oh, you're such an optimist. I'm a realist because it happens. I start off with everybody I meet. I trust until you give me a reason not to, or a reason to think, okay, your agenda or your operating system's different than that. And I'm very quick to move on. And I've also noticed that these communities that are operating on this love and abundance, they're really powerful at policing the community. I was in Mexico for an event called the Yearn, beginning of May, and it was about 300 people were part of this group, and it was similar to the gathering I do in Nebraska. And there was one person in particular that was a bunch of solicitations, and it was just didn't feel right. The community immediately eliminated this person from the community. So the community will police itself as well.
He got thrown off the island.
Right, good.
All right. So one thing you said at the beginning of this thing was like the abundance that flowed into your life when you changed your operating system was dramatically different pre-50 versus post-50. I think that was the age you gave. So were you able to accumulate meaningful wealth prior to this shift change? And what was your feeling around the wealth that you created?
So it was, I accumulated a lot of wealth, Jerome, and it was, so going back to that, I made a pact with myself never to be 42 years ago. And I remember thinking then, if I ever had $10,000, I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't feel threatened. And I remember achieving it and having this, that's not what I thought that would feel like. And I go, well, maybe it's a bigger number. So I thought, well, maybe it's 100. And then I didn't get it. And it was 1 million. And then it was 10 million. And I still remember sitting at my desk on a cold January day in Omaha, because every year I would have this ritual where I would take the first weekend after the new year and I would do my balance sheet. And I was so excited to do it, but without fail, when I got done, no matter what the number was, I felt hollow and empty and like, this isn't how I thought it would be. And then it's scary because you're like, what is going to make me happy? How do I find happiness? How do I find joy? And it was really, going back to the Karosh example, at the end of that week-long therapy session, and that he said, you got to come out, you got to unplug. I had read a lot of books, and I had read this book on psychedelics. And I'm like, would I be a candidate for psychedelic therapy? And he's like, absolutely. And I'm thinking, where has this been all week? Why am I bringing this to you as I'm getting ready to walk out of your office on a Friday afternoon? And he said something to me. He's today one of my closest friends. He said, the medicine will call you when it's ready for you. And so
Ooh.
he refers me to a doctor in Topanga Canyon, which is basically LA. And 6 months later, and keep in mind, I drank beer and wine. That was it. And so I go do this, 10-hour medicine journey
Oh my
in
God.
Topanga Canyon. And it was like a wow. It was that was really shifting my operating system. And here's the other thing it did, and I don't want to get too religious here, and I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual.
Yeah.
My parents were atheists, so I grew up without any kind of spirituality. When I came out of that first session, I had like no question that there was something. I didn't know what it was, but I say my spirituality was born on that day in Topanga Canyon. And since I've done more work around it, and I have 100% with my heart and soul certainty that, that where we go. And that in itself has just brought so much joy and happiness to my life to know it's not a one and done, here on this planet.
There's a freeing piece to that too, right? Because you
Yes.
don't have to. I mean, this just goes back to the scarcity, right? If there's only one, then you're going to treat it a special way versus there being additional opportunities. You said 42 years ago you vowed you would never be poor. So did you not experience financial hardship or financial ruin as you've built Carson to what it is today?
Right when I first started, so I had saved up through a bunch of things, a little bit of money. And, so I started my dorm room I started this business out of my college dorm room at the University of Nebraska when I was 18. And I did lose, I actually had a negative net worth of $2,300 shortly into it, because in order to try to turn that little bit of money I had into a lot of money, I was working with a commodity broker in Omaha. And he thought, yeah, you can double or triple this money. Well, what happened is I lost what little money I had, plus even more. So yeah, I had a rough start. Good news is, when you jump out of the building and you're only 6 inches off the ground, it doesn't hurt too bad. And that's what it was. I'm, up to this point in my life, I've been fortunate. I've had plenty of financial resources, but I was spiritually broke. So I'm a big believer that if you don't have some spiritual, and I think that you need to be balanced. Like 0 times a billion is 0. But let's just say instead of having $1 billion, you had 1 million in financial resources and 1 million on the spiritual side. Well, then you got $1 billion.
Still at a
the,
Billy.
the effectiveness of it, right?
So, all right, this is where it gets good, man, because I think that energy or currency, I think currency or money is an energy.
It is.
And so you said you were spiritually broke. So how were you able to attract that much wealth when you were spiritually broke?
Because I worked so hard all the time, Jerome. That is really the answer. Yeah. The reason I say I was broke is because I had no happiness derived from it. Right? Let's say you have unlimited amount of food, but you're chained and you can only get within a foot of it. You're going to starve to death. Because even if you own it and you have it, but you can't access it. And that's what I mean by being spiritually broke. You can have a lot of resources, but if you don't love yourself and you aren't good with you, it doesn't do you any good. There's a saying out there that I don't even know if it's true, but I laugh at it. It's like money doesn't buy happiness, but it makes being miserable a lot more fun. I don't even agree with that anymore. I used to hear that, because when you're miserable, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It truly doesn't. You
It
might as well
doesn't
have none.
fix anything. Yeah, it
It doesn't
doesn't
fix
fix
anything.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liken money to air. and it's really only valuable to the point of you realizing when you don't have it or you don't have enough. And then it
Yes.
becomes the most important thing in the world. Outside of that, it's not all that important. And a lot of people nod their head when I offer that as a metaphor for it. So you were in your dorm room building a financial services business. Is that right?
Kind of. I mean, in the early days, it was me cold calling out of a phone book because, again, I had no money. I had gotten an insurance contract with a company by the name of Amoco Life, which is an oil company. And Amoco was one of the first companies. Them and E.F. Hutton had come out with an insurance program called Universal Life, which in the old days it was whole life, and this was supposed to be and was a dramatically improved way of buying insurance and saving money, albeit expensive way to save money. And so for 6 months I did that. I was calling up farmers because I could talk farming, weather, equipment, all of that stuff. I'd call up farmers out of the phone book. I'd start cold calling them like 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 6:30, and they would answer. And I would set up these meetings, and I'd go to sit at the table and talk to them about buying. I was trying to sell insurance to everybody. There's that saying, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I was a hammer, they were the nails. And I hated it. I mean, it's like, God, I'm trying to convince people to buy something that I don't even believe they need, trying to sell them on it. So after 6 months of doing that, I got my securities license. I started selling mutual funds, and then I decided I was going to pursue my CFP, which is a certified financial planner designation. And I did that for really, just it was a grind from 1983. I became a CFP in 1994. And then from 1994, really through the year 2000, I was what would be known as an unconscious incompetent. I didn't know what I was doing, but I really didn't know I didn't know, because you would go to conferences. Things were very opaque in those days. We didn't even understand all the ways everybody was making money on a deal, because a lot of it was not disclosed or disclosed properly or buried so deep. And by the way, a lot of that has not changed today, to my dismay. And so but I came to the conclusion that this could be done a lot better than what it was being done. And really in 2000, amidst we had Y2K, we had the financial crisis, I wrote a paper to myself about, if I had no limitations and no constraints on technology, what would I create for the future? What would I want as a consumer? What would I want my team to do? What would I want my team to think about? How they could remove the friction out of my life? And I still have this paper to this day. And I did manifest a vision about what then became Carson Group. Today, I remember celebrating with my team, which was really small. It was 3 people at the time, when we had $25 million in assets under management. I remember we had a dot matrix printer. We had a celebration in my office on a Friday. We drank a bunch of wine. We were all hungover all for the next weekend. I mean, it was like, I still remember how sick I felt. We drank so much. And today we're $36 billion. And so I was grinding so hard to get to that 25 million. And then really taking a step back, saying, what could be done better that people would pay for and appreciate and consider highly valuable? And one of my mentors said, Ron, the key to a successful business is, 1, hire the best people you can find and get the hell out of their way. And I've seen that play out time and time again. And number 2, people don't want to pay for anything, but they'll invest in everything. If you don't call your fee a fee, it's an investment in their future, because no one's going to pay you 1% to make 1% less a year. What they're going to do is consider that investment. And as long as they can see the return they're getting based on what you're doing as an organization, they will gladly invest in their future. And that's really how we've built Carson Group today.
I don't. Could you even count to 36 billion when you had 25 million
No,
in AUM?
no, no, no. I remember driving down the road thinking if I could ever get, because I started off people giving me, 25 bucks a month. Once in a while I'd get someone to write me a check for a few thousand. I was driving to Hastings, Nebraska, which is in central Nebraska. And the biggest client I had had up to that point was like $15,000 they had invested with me. And I was like, man, I had this big potential client that had $50,000 if I was successful that they were going to invest with me. And I'll never forget that, the first $50,000, client that I had. And it started off just getting a client, getting them to trust you, giving you a little bit of money to invest for them.
Now, were you a kid when the family lost the farm or
I
whatever
was
happened?
17. I was
Okay.
17. Yeah.
And what happened? Like, why was that such a visceral moment for you?
So, so Jeannie is from a town of 300. We just met about that time, just prior to the bankruptcy. And so, I was newly in a relationship with someone that I knew was going to be my wife someday. And then I'm from a town of 1,000, and our towns were about 10 miles apart. And then in a small town, I love my small town. I'm from Tacoma, Nebraska. Everybody knows your business, good and bad. Like that's sometimes really good and sometimes really bad. And being, I was a decent athlete in high school, so I was well known, I was popular, I had lots of friends. The humiliation of that was just that, and maybe it was all in my mind, but I felt like everybody was talking about our family. Jeannie and her parents, I remember going up for dinner, and I just imagined that they were looking at me and my family as like losers since we had just lost everything. And it was, to this day, I don't know how much of it was perceived and how much of it was real, but it was one of those things that I'll never forget. I don't even want to say scarred me, but I say it seared my soul because it really burned deep to say, I'm never going to have this happen to me.
Wow. Wow. One of the things that we found with Apex performers is they have 5 different characteristics or events that happen in their life. And total financial ruin's one of them. I've not seen it where it was the family that had it, but you were in that age where it was like, I'm deciding who I'm gonna be as an adult, and this is what I'm not going to be. So I think that is part of the reason why it like triggered you to go where you went. And so that put
And can I add something, Jerome? I thought I was going to be a farmer. And so all of a sudden, I saw my dad cry. The one and only time I saw him cry is when he told me that we lost everything and that I would have to find something else to do because I was going to go to school, come back and farm. And so now I didn't even have that as an opportunity.
So, I mean, it just blew up your whole thought of what life was going to be. And
Yes.
so then you decided this lit the fire. I'm going to build it and I'm going to build it big. I don't know if you saw 36 billion, but you saw 25 million maybe.
And there was a piece of it. There was a piece of it because I had a couple of teachers, while I was popular, not with maybe some of the teachers, because I was a high energy kid. I had a couple teachers tell me, you'll never amount to anything. And so it was a piece of it was like, fuck you all. Like, I'm going to be successful.
Yep. That's one of those things. Now, did you ever go back and tell them thank you for all their help?
you know, by the way, let me say on the flip side of that, I had a couple of teachers and coaches.
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcatchers. Your dreams should be real. Let's get back to the show.
Are as responsible for my success as anything. They were amazing in my life. And those, I don't even know if they, a lot of the teachers in these small towns, they're there for a few years and then they're gone because it's a stepping stone. It doesn't pay much. You live in the middle of nowhere. But, so I have no idea if they even know of any of my success. But it has been beautiful. Jeannie and I have been able to go back to both of our communities and do some really cool things for the community. And it's so appreciated, so heartfelt. And we love being in that position to be able to give back to the places we came from.
Now, let me get this right. You married your high school sweetheart?
Yes. Yeah, we've been together.
Don't date yourself. Don't date yourself. Hold on. I'm playing. Go ahead.
42 years this August 15th.
42 years.
Yes.
Through building all the stuff, through all of the stress, through all of whatever tragedies there might have been along the journey. 42 years.
Yes.
That's probably a bigger accomplishment or achievement than getting the AUM, man. Congratulations.
I think so. She is awesome. She's my best friend. We have a lot of fun together. But it wasn't, listen, imagine, how old are you, Jerome?
41.
All right. Imagine from 17 to 41, how different you are. 100%. And we call them S-curve explosions. Like we've had several iterations and we were separated for 3 years when my mom died. And I didn't think we'd ever come back together. And we both grew tremendously through that period. And we started dating again and we had our first grandchild. And now we have three daughters and we have 3 beautiful grandchildren. And we're living, we love our life and our life is loving us back. And we love traveling and being together all the time.
Wow. So I got to ask, man, you talked about your team of 3. What was your first key hire? Who was your first key hire?
So a lady, she's since passed. I'll use her name. Her name was Avis Vopolinski. And Avis worked, she was one of my clients that had a little bit of business with me. And I was just drowning. So I hired Avis for like $2.50 an hour.
Whoa.
And, Avis came in and helped me organize some of my stuff. So Avis Vopolinski was my very first hire.
Wow. And so was that to be offensive and like calling for you, or was that more administrative and kind of keeping people at bay?
It was 100% administrative. Yeah. I laugh because today, we're regulated by FINRA and the SEC. And in those days we were too. But if anybody would have ever come looking, I was terrible at the details. Like I had these filing cabinets and I had one that was A, and anything that had to do with A, sales material, I just threw it all in that drawer, and a B, a different drawer. And I could never find anything. So Avis came in and helped me organize my stuff so I could actually find something once in a while.
Wow. Now, you said you're chairman of the board, and you also told me that if you're in Omaha, you're in the office.
Yes.
So are you still in the day-to-day operations, or are
Not
you
at
out?
all. I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. I'm now built. I started about 2 years ago. I started what's known as Carson Family Office, which handles our interests, and so that's become a full-time job. I'm launching a new business in October around helping other entrepreneurs shift their operating system from fear and scarcity to love and abundance. And so I've been like, that's going to be a really cool launch. I'm getting close to. Well, I ask you, I've got 2 names, and which one you like best? One is Maya, M-Y-A, and the other is Immerse, O-M-E-R-S-E. And they both have really cool meanings around the work that we want to do. Which one you like best?
That says Immerse.
Immerse?
Yeah.
I like them both. We've got our attorneys looking to see how, because you do a cursory review of a name, and then once you pick it, we hired this group out of, it's called Nice Works out of South Africa. They've been fantastic to work with. And they gave us, some names 6 months ago. And it's really been hard. Like getting the right name for something is important.
So what does immersion mean since I picked that one?
So I'd have to literally, I can't recall. I just remember going through it, and if you really want to know, I could pull it up and see what they told us.
I will
Just keep
leave it for
going
the listeners to go find
and
it
I'll
out.
see. Yeah, I will. Yeah, they just presented all of this to us. Let's see here. So Maya, it means a philosophy, an illusion, or a dream, courage or bravery. They go, in the case of Maya, our community and our prospective members have woken up from an illusion of fulfillment and are looking for something more or something else. They may not understand it yet, but the power to find what they're searching for is theirs, aided and supported by the community. The idea of an illusion or a dream may also play into psilocybin, its psychoactive nature, or the fact that it shows us that there's more than the reality or dream that we perceive. When referring to courage or bravery, Maya tells us we need courage or bravery to take on hard things and approach a task or journey of understanding our true selves. So that's that. Immerse means return to yourself. Gosh, it got cut off on the sheet here. Means return to yourself and opening yourself up to ever rushing change. It's an exploration of your life and yourself. There's more to it, but I cut myself short. But anyways, it's I like them both. So whichever one we end up with, I'll be happy with.
That's amazing. It sounds like you figured out what your next is. And so
Yeah.
stepped out of CEO, step two chairman, kind of detach yourself from the day to day. And now you've got the freedom of time and the resources to work on your next. And so, how'd you find this is your next thing?
I stumbled into it through my own personal work, Jerome. I remember, again, I found the spirituality, and then it was later on in what we call these journeys. They're very medicinal, they're very intentional. And I came out of it and said, this is how I want to dedicate my life. It's been such a gift to me to experience this that I want to have other entrepreneurs suffer or that are suffering not suffer anymore. And now, now that I've made the shift, I can spot them a mile away. And they are like, I can say, how happy are you really? And if they're vulnerable, they'll go, I'm so miserable. But I keep thinking the next, comma is going to make a difference in my life. And it doesn't. And I've known that for a while, but, I'm not happy. And so we bring them in. This weekend, we had 10 from really around the world. And the seismic shift that I get to see is really cool to have a front row seat at it.
Wow. So are you leading them through the journey, or you're bringing people in and you're just creating the space for it to happen?
We create a space and I actually participate in it. I'm one of our lead facilitators.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. And this is, I suspect, a little bit more interesting than doing financial services work.
It is. Yeah.
So when you made the change from being CEO to being chairman, uh, did you sell some of your company in order to like justify that move, or what was kind of the catalyst?
So Jerome, I've done it, and as you can imagine, and a lot of people listening to this, their single largest assets are company. And any good financial advisor would tell you, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Mark Twain, I think, said, put them all in one basket, watch that basket. I don't subscribe to that philosophy. And so back in 16, I sold 20% of the company to a private equity firm out of New York called Long Ridge, which was phenomenal company. They were really great on helping us professionalize our business. And then Bain Capital came in and bought them out. And took a additional stake in our business. One of the things that has been really important to me and my family is that we remain independent, that we're going to be a 100-year firm. And so we will always control the board. And I will, as long as I'm alive, I want Carson to make it 100 years at a minimum. And I want us to remain in Omaha and remain independent and not be acquired by one of the wirehouses.
Well, I don't know. When you start aggregating that much AUM, it gets very enticing for those guys because I mean they want to grab it as quickly as they can, right?
For sure. And we've had many opportunities to do that, but we've said no. We've got enough. We've got enough. And I don't need to, we're almost all of our money is being left to our foundation. Our kids are getting a little bit, taking another Buffett quote. We're giving our kids enough they can do anything, but not so much they can do nothing. And the rest of it is going into conservation easement and these properties that we own and financial resources to support this work around. My mom was manic depressive, so around mental wellness, clean water, and feeding the world through healthy food. We're still farmers, so we're very involved in farming in Nebraska, and we're into algae and we're into regenerative ag. For the listeners that really don't know what's going on with our food and topsoil, there's two Netflix shows I'd recommend. One is Kiss the Ground, and the other is Common Ground. Common Ground just came out April 22nd on Earth Day. Kiss the Ground's a little older, but they're very fun to watch because you learn a ton about food and the way our system works and the way that the big petrochemical companies are really messing up our soil and our health. And this is what our money will go towards, is funding these kinds of initiatives and making these kinds of changes for all of us.
Now, I hear a lot of advisors, I coach a lot of them, and they'll say stuff to me like, Jerome, I hope I die at my desk and I'm going to be an advisor for as long as I possibly can. And there's no point in me exiting. And you mentioned, well, one of the points may be to diversify your wealth a little bit. But what would you say to those folks that are in that part of their life and they have that philosophy?
I mean, if they truly, I used to say the same thing, Jerome, I was going to die at my desk. Because, for me personally, when I was miserable with all the success, I at least felt productive and I felt valued. But what else would I do, if I wasn't doing that? So I think in the absence of what else am I going to do, and I think you'll easily lose your identity. So I don't ever recommend. We have a thing called the blueprinting process that we developed within our coaching programs. Say, live your life by design, not by default. And a big piece of that is, if there were no limitations, if there were no expectations from anybody else, just for you, how would you live your life? What would the perfect life look like? Where would you live? How would you live? What would you do with your time and resources? And if that is coming in and being at your desk and dying at your desk, then God bless you, But for a lot of people, it's just because they don't know what else there could be.
Yeah. And so to me, it's finding your next. I suspect the way you light up when you talk about your new project, I think if you knew that that was available, you would have quickly left that thought process, that operating system. And part of me wants to say that that operating system was part of the scarcity. That was part of Ron. That wasn't Omani, but I don't know if that's true.
It was Ron. And it also was beautiful ingredients because I'm a big believer that you can only feel happiness and joy to the extent you feel down in despair. Because once you experience one, you can experience the opposite. That's why I'm grateful for that searing of the soul, because now it allows me to feel the equal and opposite way of life.
I watch a lot of people try to numb the lows, but if you numb the lows, you numb the highs. And so experiencing the full range, I believe, true is the magic. So most people don't know that you could sell a business. What was your first exposure to selling a piece of a business? Because I think you had to know that it could happen before you would do it.
The very first piece of a business, I actually sold 40% of my coaching business in the mid 90s to a company called Pacific Life out of California, which then became a Nebraska company, ironically. Do you know what I'm talking about? Pacific Life, the whale. So when you see that whale coming out of the ocean, I chuckle because it's a Nebraska company now. And they bought. So that was the first transaction I did, and it really felt good. It felt like there's some validation that something I built and created was worth something. It was a small deal. And then there was Long Ridge coming in 2016. I remember Jeannie and I, we went down. We just closed like on a Monday or Tuesday, and then that Wednesday we went down to the Masters in Augusta. I remember her and I walking around the golf course, and it just felt surreal. Like we had, and it was the first time we had real liquidity to where we didn't have to really worry about money at that time.
Wow. So was that the celebration or was that already planned prior to the
It was
sale?
just happened. It was just coincidental. It wasn't even a celebration. And that was another piece of it that Jeannie would say, can we really just stop and like enjoy this? And I'm like, yeah, but I was still in that process of fear and scarcity. And it was around that time that, we did the deal. And then my mom died. And then all of a sudden, we were, I was in a tough mental position. So we never really ever celebrated anything. Now we celebrate everything.
That's a big shift.
Yeah, it is.
That's a huge shift. Didn't celebrate anything. So just the it's just part of it, right? Move on to the next thing. Nothing really here worth seeing or watching. We've been here, done that. Next. And you
And I was superstitious. If I celebrate it too much, then it's going to come crashing down. And there was this piece of me that didn't deserve it, so if I didn't deserve it, it wouldn't stay. And if I'm not on to the next thing in an aggressive way, then this whole house of cards will come. It was a totally irrational thought and thoughts that Kurosh helped me sort out. But it was, for me, it felt very real.
what's really interesting about that is like nobody gave it to you. You worked extremely hard in order to earn what you had, but yet and still you still question whether or not you deserved it or if it would stay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I think that's a piece of the kid, you see, I didn't know my parents were even on the verge of over levered. And, the interest rates in 1982 were 21.5%. So they were levered, interest rates were high. But then just overnight, you go from we're okay to we're not okay. And, and I'm sure it took years to get in that position. But the way I felt about it, it just happened overnight. It happened in a moment. And so there's a deep down, there's that piece that thinks, well, if that could happen to them, it can happen to me.
Whoa. So was your dad able to build it back at all or like
Yeah,
what happened?
my dad, luckily, I was financially successful. And so we went into farming together. So the degree I started being successful, we farmed for years. And he's 83 now, and out of farming. And my sister and her husband farm a part of our farm ground today.
Did you buy back the same piece you had or did you go get new?
Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah, yeah.
That had to be a fist pump. You had to celebrate that one,
But
right?
that was good. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our whole. It's our home base for operations as we speak today.
Wow, wow, wow. All right. So I gotta ask, right? You get the wire or did you get a check? I don't know which one it is,
Got
right?
a
But
wire.
you
Got a
get the
wire.
wire.
Yeah,
Um, what'd you feel when you saw it for the first time?
really good. Really good. Yeah, it felt because there's, I was wondering, is it going to feel like all those numbers that didn't mean anything? But it really felt good, really good.
What was the
Yeah.
difference this time?
I think it was validation that what I had built was really valuable. That someone, after all of the due diligence and looking at every aspect of our agenda of our business, that they said, I want to own 25% of your company. And they valued our business at that time at $130 million. And so it was a big deal. Yeah.
It was a big check. That was a big wire.
Yeah,
I suspect that's more money than you ever had in your account at one time.
for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
so was there a low spot after feeling that high?
Yes, my mom, you mean business related, or was it
You
my low spot? The lowest spot of my life was when my mom passed away. I was a mama's boy. I had a codependent relationship with her. I knew no matter what I did, there's this special relationship with a son and his mom. And no matter what you can relate to this, right? No matter what I did, I could have killed 1,000 kids. My mom would still love me. You
no
know,
matter
just
what.
no matter what, there's that love. And when she was gone, I really felt lonely. I felt scared. I felt lost. That was my low point. Business low points. Um, ugh, I've had a bunch of them, Jerome. I mean, I've made some really, um, I've never viewed failure as failure, but simply a more intelligent way to approach the problem. And, we could do a whole podcast. I could list all kinds of failures because I had so many of them, but
Yeah.
I learned from each one of them. And it made me a better business operator. It made me a better advisor. It made me better because I really do learn from my mistakes. But I had a boatload of them because
Yeah.
I'm, you know, I would I would try lots of things out of necessity, and when they didn't work, I would learn from it and move on to something else.
We find when we're working with business owners who exit that they experience this lull not too long after the wire clears, and they feel a void and they feel some, it's almost like they're grieving, but they don't know what they're grieving. What's really interesting about your journey is you've sold minority pieces of your business, and so by remaining in control, it's not like it's completely gone. It's not like, you walk away and they go over here and you're over there. You still have a big piece of it. But for those who like completely exit, man, it's pretty tough for those folks usually.
I think it would be harder if I had sold control. And so you're right. I still have control of business. And I've been preparing for my step down for 3 years. And so, because I knew what awaited on the other side. And it was like, I love financial services and I love what we do and how we do it, but nothing compared to, I like it because a lot of my partners will ask me, what are you working on now? I said, I'm working on creating the ultimate human experience, which I believe I can, longer term vision. I think what I'm creating, I can reconnect back to Carson someday. I think it'll take us to $1 trillion in my lifetime. I believe we'll have $1 trillion under management, not for the sake of being big, because I believe there's massive consolidation coming. And we've done a great job at Carson at infrastructure building around clean data. And I believe this is a whole other topic, but I believe AI is going to be bigger and more impactful than even people working in the space every day. And for a firm like ours, we're going to be able to leverage a really incredible experience because we've had such a maniacal focus on clean data for about a decade now, and we've spent 100+ million getting really clean data and data warehouses. But there's very few companies like ours that have done this, and it's really setting us up. We're in the think of a J. We're right in the curve of the J. I mean, in the last 10 days, we've had 3 billion plus opportunities I think we're going to get. And so we are accelerating right now because of the investments made in the past. Combine that with being able to create a world where we can help the most successful people shift their operating system. And part of that will be able to provide financial services for them.
That's wild. I can't imagine. You can count that high. A T. That's like the GDP of a small country, or maybe a pretty big one. I don't know. A trillion's a lot of
Hey,
money,
Jerome, I
man.
just want to give you a heads up. I got like 2 more minutes. I got to hop on another call, but yep.
Yeah. So, oh man, this has been fun, man. There's so many other places I could go. I just admire what you've done, and I mean, you're the epitome of a dream catcher, Omani.
Oh,
Like,
thank you, man.
there's so many people who have gone and tried and failed and given up, and in spite of all of it, you've been able to do it. You've been able to keep your wife of 42 years and just grow things massive. The last question I would love to ask you is, um, what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode?
I want everybody listening to this to find, like, if they're not fully in alignment and waking up and loving the day, make the changes necessary. I coach people all the time is, would you rather have the certainty of not being happy or the uncertainty of having a shot at being happy? You have it within you to have anything you want, whether it's a business, a relationship, but it's got to start from the inside out. It's got to start with you, and you're worth investing in. So take the time to find yourself, and you will create energy that you can give your energy away because you're replenishing it so fast. So many of us, and I have a lot of working moms here at Carson, I've seen it over the years, they deplete themselves all the time. And so be selfish to be selfless. And selfish may be a bad term, but it's really about self-love, self-care, really get yourself right, take care of the golden goose. And there's nothing that you can't accomplish on this planet. Nothing. But you want to seek happiness and joy and lead a joyful life, and you'll attract it in abundance everywhere you go.
Man, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the man himself, Omani. Till the next time, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.